Hi everyone, Bert from Seasoned Gaming, and back with another accessory for your controllers. We tend to do a lot of these, and some of our biggest requests have been on typical conversions between different consoles when you're jumping around. Now this one comes from a company called Brook. I'm going to kind of zoom in as best as I can here, and you can kind of see the actual Brook iguana right there. So B-R-O-O-K. And what this one specifically does is it allows you to play Xbox controllers on the PS4. Now, one of the key things here is in very detailed description, they do state that you have to be wired in to do this. So if you do have a wireless controller and you're hoping that this little dongle here will convert your Elite or your typical Xbox controller into a wireless controller for the PlayStation 4, that will not happen. I've tested it in a number of different situations. I've also used the wireless adapter from Microsoft and plug it into here hoping it would work. But so why would you use this? Why is this important? Well, a lot of people consider the Xbox One controller to be a lot more ergonomic, and it also has the offset joystick. So a lot of people prefer to use that on different consoles. Well, the DualShock has the two joysticks right in the middle, and they're pretty close to each other. A lot of people don't prefer that. So what else would you use it for besides a DualShock replacement? Well, let's say you have a really nice steering wheel. Maybe you have a Logitech G920, maybe you have one of the Microsoft wheels and you just prefer that, and you want to play Gran Turismo, you want to play an F1 game, you want to play something, but you don't want to have to buy another wheel. Well, that's where this comes in handy. Other thing would be your big arcade joysticks for fighters. So this one really comes into effect with a lot of different situations that you might be interested in wanting to use an Xbox type controller. Now another cool thing here is third-party wired controllers for the Xbox work with this as well. So if you're using like a Power A, maybe a PDP, maybe one of those cheaper controllers that are wired, they will work on here too. So let's get this open and talk a little bit more about it. One other key thing here is that it also works for PC. So if you have maybe an older Xbox controller or a wheel, funny enough, and I haven't tested the wheel, but that got me thinking, maybe you picked up a PC game, maybe you're on Game Pass or something, and you want to use it, you can use this adapter as well. So for starters, the packaging is very straightforward. It is simply a USB dongle. And there we go. If I can show that to you even more up close. Not much to it. You do have an LED that's going to show you here to show that it's working. Brook does highly recommend that you update the firmware on this when you get it. One of the neat things here is that it does have a couple scannable barcodes here that you can actually use, or QC codes, what am I thinking here? That you can actually use for the user guide and also for firmware. It doesn't really make sense because if you're getting the firmware, you're going to plug this into your computer and then update it. Now, it has been updated fairly often, so this is actually a pretty cool device because it's supported by Brook as a very lot of different controllers and wheels are upgraded all the time. So how does it work? You simply are going to plug this thing into the front or back or wherever you want on your PlayStation 4, and then in the back here you plug in your USB cable, and if I can get that to zoom in, into the dongle here, and you're off and running. Now this is what they consider plug and play. So the second you plug in your corded controller into this dongle, it automatically recognizes it, and you hit a button on your Xbox controller and you're off and playing. Now, obviously, if you have an Elite controller, you're going to definitely want to program your buttons properly for the PlayStation 4. Obviously, the buttons don't switch. You're not going to see an A, B, X, Y or anything along those lines, or the bumpers. Everything is still going to be labeled in the sense of a typical PlayStation 4 controller. So let's take a look at that. I'm going to go ahead and give you an example. I do have a steering wheel on how this works, and an Xbox controller and a third-party Xbox controller. That way you can see how this is working. Once again, the most common FAQ question is going to be, why is it not working? What's happening? And you do have to update your firmware. So let's take a closer look at that. I'm going to be switching cameras now to the actual test of how this works. Okay, so before we get started with all the connections and everything and how it's going to work, I want to show you how these buttons are going to transfer to each other. So the Brook Converter has a standard setup as to how these are going to work. So you have your joysticks, obviously, they're going to work the same way. The things that are different is your power button up here is going to work the same way as your PlayStation button right here. Now, the other things is you have your share button, which is going to be on the PlayStation controller, will transfer over to the menu button here. and the options button will come over to this other menu button here for the Xbox. Now, as I mentioned earlier, you are going to lose the functionality of your square, triangle, and everything. You have to know those buttons just based on what you have. So they're literally going to transfer. Square is going to go to X, triangle to Y, B to circle, and A to, yes, X, not cross. And then your triggers, they're going to work similar. So you have your right bumper will go to R1, and then your R2 will go to right trigger, and then left bumper will go to L1, and then L2 will go to left trigger. It took me a second there to think about those. So keep that in mind when you're connecting these. You do have a way to switch over the way things are programmed inside of your Brook accessory, your Brook USB stick, but it's actually a lot easier just to leave it the way it is. Now, one thing you lose a bit of functionality on is this touch sensor. The other thing that you will lose functionality on to your PlayStation is if you're playing VR, you do have to have your LED sensor only on the PlayStation 4 controller. Is the only way it'll work. So if you're planning on using an Xbox controller on PlayStation VR, it won't work. So keep that in mind. And as I mentioned in the other section of the video, it's corded. So you do lose functionality regardless of if you're using a Bluetooth Xbox controller. It is going to be corded. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to move the PlayStation controller completely out of the way. You'll see it's not turned on in any form, so there's no trickery that's going on. And I am actually going to pull my PlayStation 4 over here so you can kind of see, here's the top of it. Okay, so we are now recording screen capture with PlayStation, and I'm pulling that in right now so you can see that. And I'm taking the Brooks accessory and literally just plugging it right in here. And I'm not sure if you can see it too well, but the LED did turn on here. So we have a blue LED, and that means that it's ready to be paired. And I'm literally just going to pull a standard just micro USB cable here, and I'm going to plug it straight into the end of the USB stick. Have my Xbox Elite controller. So this is what a lot of people consider as the creme de la creme this generation, as the best controller. From an ergonomic perspective, a comfort perspective, it's got everything you need. So literally just going to plug the micro USB in. Now you'll see what happens here when this is all plugged in. So immediately the controller vibrates. And right here you can see the light to the Xbox One controller has turned on, and all I'm going to do is click that. The second I click that, I am now good and going. You'll see the PlayStation is automatically recognizing me. If I want to see the different profiles that I want to use, I'm going to use my own. And that's it. I'm in. It's literally plug and play. As I mentioned, this is how easy it is to use. There's no downsides at all to it. Like I said, the main downside is you are now corded. So if you were planning on using some sort of wireless attachment, I did test the Xbox wireless adapter to see if that would use. I plugged it into the back. Tried to get it to connect to a number of controllers. No luck there whatsoever. So that is a negative. So you're probably going to want to use a stronger braided cable just because you're now using a cable for this. And you can see me here. I'm navigating straight through everything. I'm not having any problems. I can navigate to the different menus. I'm going to start Last of Us just to show you the gameplay here, to show you that it works just fine. And I hit X. And you can see the game is now launching, so no delays there at all. Like I said, you have to be somewhat of a PlayStation player to remember the layout of the controller. A lot of times PlayStation people can, and Xbox people, they don't have to know what buttons they're pressing, but as you know, this is going to be X, circle, triangle, square, and then you should know your bumpers. And then here's your share button, and then here's going to be your options button. So here you have, once again, the offset controllers. If you are maybe an Xbox player, you don't play PlayStation that much, a lot of times just your hand muscles aren't used to the different design and you cramp up really easy depending on the game that you're playing. So here I'm being asked any button, I'm hitting the X button and it's working, no problems, no questions anywhere. So let me see if actually it's gonna remember my game, and funny enough I forgot to do the cloud update. Let me just do Last of Us here and see if it lets me continue. Alright, so we're going to be launching from one of the main missions, just the first one, to show you how everything moves around, how the buttons will work the way they should. I will tell you, being a 50, I'd say probably 60-40 Xbox to PlayStation player, depending on what you're playing, it is definitely a switch from your R1 and R2 and then left bumper to left trigger and stuff. There is a bit of adjustment period that you're going to have to get used to there. These face buttons, they're pretty much normal. Your joysticks will feel different as well, and having that D-pad down here instead of up here is going to take a bit of adjusting. I'm not going to say it's like some other worldly science or something like that, but there is a difference, and your hand will feel the difference. You sometimes get so used to the PlayStation or Xbox controller, but you kind of forget your muscle memory that's there. So keep that in mind when you're playing. Let me just get started here. Let's see if I can skip some of this. Oh, can I skip? No, I can't skip. So I'm just going to start moving with Joel, and you'll see everything's working as it should. So I'm literally moving down the city as normal. My joystick's working just fine. If I do a circle, you can kind of see everything works right away. There's no lag whatsoever coming through here. So fantastic little option that you're getting from Brooks here. Let me actually just unplug this one and show you another controller. So I'm going to hit start here just so it pauses my game. Going to easily just disconnect this. Automatically turns Xbox controller off. This is a standard Xbox controller. This was technically the version 2 that had the 3.5mm jack from Microsoft. And literally just going to plug them into the top. It vibrates again, and then here's our light that we're looking for. And automatically it shows the stick. You can kind of see the controllers in there. And right away I can literally just pick up right where I left off. Here I go walking with Joel again. It's as if nothing ever happened. So you have all your buttons ready to go for you. Pretty cool. So nothing really too different here. Just wanted to show you the difference on a standard Xbox controller versus an Elite. Gonna unplug this. Now a couple other things that I wanted to show you here is I have a fighter stick. So this is a Mortal Kombat X. This is to show you how old it is. This actually works with the 360 and Xbox. And the easiest thing you can think of is if you have an Xbox controller that is designed for Xbox and you want to try it out, it will work. So I actually tested this earlier. Let me just remove this standard thing because it's got its own plug. So this is actually a controller from PDP, and let me get my cable. It's just USB, so one of the good things here is that it is corded. I don't have to worry about any difference. But I'm simply going to plug this in, and you can maybe you can't or maybe you can't, but this light just turned on, and immediately I'm right back in. Like, I mean, my stuff's working as if it was normal. Let me see if I can go. So there's the start button. And one of the things is that it's tricky here is I probably want to think of a simpler game, but you can see I'm now navigating with this controller across here. So this is a fighter stick. I don't know if I have any fighting games installed on my PlayStation at the moment, but I did test this earlier to make sure that it worked as it should on my Pro. I didn't want to pull my Pro out. I'm using my standard launch PlayStation 4. And I've got Gam3Gear on there, and I did play with this, no problems whatsoever. You can see I don't have sticks here. I just have a standard D-pad with a fighting layout, I guess you can kind of call it. Got my bumpers, and then here I have my start button, or I should say for PlayStation, options button and share button are right up here. So it was really cool to be able just to plug this in and play. The one thing I can show you here is that it's working on the dashboard, so that's the easiest thing. I guess, please take my word on it. I did test it. I played a bit of Gam3Gear with it, so that was really cool to do. Another thing, oh, there I go with these. I forgot how sensitive it was to play it, but I'm at least still recording here with you guys. It doesn't matter. It's fine. I do have, let me just turn my PlayStation 4 back on. You gotta forget how sensitive this little area is. You barely touch something and it's gonna get all messed up. This is a newer controller from PDP, and this goes to show you how quick they are updating the actual stick's firmware. Launch again, PlayStation with your sensitive buttons. But this just came out, and we have reviewed it, but we haven't actually uploaded the actual video yet. That's not till next week, but it already has a firmware update. So I'm back on the PlayStation screen. I'm just going to plug it in, and immediately you can see that the little light turns on here at the top, and if I hit this button, I'm right back in. So maybe you have a PlayStation 4 and you don't want to use an Elite, you don't have an Elite. Maybe you just prefer to use the thumbstick layout that's cheaper. These controllers only run you 25 bucks. I have seen them on sale already for below that. But now you can have the offset sticks for a lot cheaper of an option. So you're looking at 25 bucks for an offset, maybe a more comfortable, maybe you were an Xbox player and you kind of abandoned the Xbox One because you didn't like it this generation. You become more of a PlayStation player and you want to go back to this layout. So now you have the option for a cheaper thing. And this works for third-party controllers, so here I am already controlling. Once again, it's kind of funny how easy it is to switch in and out of just different controllers that you may have. Maybe you didn't want to use the Elite that moment, you wanted to go back to a standard, maybe you have a fighter game, whatever it is. Once again, plug and play. That's the biggest thing they talk about. Now, the other thing that they support is tournament fighting sticks. So if you've got the joysticks and maybe you're a big Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, whatever player, those are supported here as well for this. So if you've got an Xbox stick, you've got a PlayStation, you don't want to go buy another one, it works for that as well. And then steering wheels. So I do have a Logitech G920. I did test it on a couple games now. Unfortunately, the games that I have, which was Gran Turismo, that wheel is not supported on Gran Turismo. So I was still able to go there and turn the wheel and everything, but the pedals weren't working as they should. So that was a bit of a letdown. I would say the biggest thing is if you're trying to take advantage the most out of this this USB stick, this converter, it's probably going to be best suited for your actual controller. That you're trying to do. Maybe tournament sticks. I can't speak too much on tournament sticks. I'm not a big fighter when it comes to games, so I'm not into fighting games, so I can't speak too much on that. But it is pretty good value. So you're looking at $39.99 for this converter for plug and play functionality. Now, a couple other things that I do want to mention is you can. This is actually coming from the actual box. And you can use your camera on your phone, you use the QR code, and it gives you the whole user guide. Not only the mappings are there for you, but you can also take advantage of other things like the turbo button. There's different ways that you can set up a turbo button by holding your actual Xbox button, and then whether it be a share or options button, it's on the user guide. And then there's ways you can flip your buttons as well. So let's say you want circle and X to flip on the PlayStation side. Well, you can do that, and you can program your actual USB stick to remap the buttons on your Xbox controller. So those options are there. I'm not going to mess with that too much. I prefer to leave the layout the way it is between PlayStation and Xbox. I'm not going to do any tweaking with that here. But if you have any questions, let us know. I do encourage you guys that if you do plan on picking it up, once again, it is called the Brook Game Controller Super Converter. This is the Xbox to PlayStation 4 adapter. Awesome reviews. A lot of people have asked us, instead of buying that Nacon or Scuff or, the new Astro controller, why don't you just buy an Elite controller? Your Elite controller, and I'm not trying to plug this controller in any form whatsoever, but a lot of people that are coming from Xbox to PlayStation consider this as the best controller, and you even have PlayStation people that love this controller over the DualShock 4. So the option is there for that. It's kind of really cool. I can't suggest it anymore. Like I said, the only functionality you lose is you're going wired, so you have to use a wire. And then if you use VR, or if you like the functions of a typical DualShock, so the DualShock, you're going to have that speaker, you're going to have this Sense button up here, you're going to have your lighting in the back. If you're okay with losing those functions, then this is the way to go, in my opinion, if you're wanting to take full advantage of that. So hopefully you like what you saw here, folks. This is kind of a really cool adapter. You can find it directly from them, Amazon, whatever it is. Let us know if you have any questions, and simply as I always say, thanks for watching.